My own son looked me in the eye and said, "Dad, you're not needed here anymore." The words tore through me like a knife. But I didn't argue. I didn't beg. Langdon, I just smiled, because I knew something he didn't. And when he came crawling back, begging for the fortune he thought I didn't have, I made sure he learned the hardest lesson of his life. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share your thoughts in the comments below. This story will keep you on the edge of your seat. My name is Robert, 67 years old, a retired construction foreman who built not just homes and roads, but a family, or so I thought. I raised my son, Daniel, after his mother died when he was just 8 years old. I was both father and mother, packing lunches, ironing his school shirts, and saving every dollar I could so he'd never feel the emptiness of loss. I remember his little hand clutching mine as we walked to school, his dark eyes wide with questions about the world. "Dad," he once asked, "will we always be together?" "Always," I told him. And I believed it. For years, every birthday cake, every scraped knee, every graduation picture was proof that I'd done something right. I worked myself to the bone, 12-hour shifts 7 days a week, so Daniel could go to college debt-free. I skipped vacations, skipped meals sometimes, skipped buying myself new shoes, just to put away a little more for him. Every brick I laid, every roof I repaired, I thought of him. He was my future, my purpose. But life has a cruel way of showing you the truth about people you love. It all began one crisp autumn afternoon. I had driven out to Daniel's new home, the one I helped him buy with a down payment from my retirement fund. I'd spent half my savings on that house, just so my son and his wife could live comfortably. As I stepped onto the polished front porch carrying a bag of groceries I'd picked up for them, Daniel opened the door. He didn't smile. He didn't even look surprised. Instead, he sighed. "Dad, we need to talk." Inside, his wife, Melissa, sat on the sofa with her arms folded, her lips pressed into a thin line. The air felt colder than the autumn wind outside. "What's going on?" I asked, setting the groceries on the counter. Melissa spoke before Daniel could. "Robert, we appreciate everything you've done, but we need space. You come around too much. It's not healthy for us." I blinked, confused. "I only visit once a week. I just bring food, help with the yard." Daniel finally looked at me. His eyes, once so full of warmth, were like stone. "Dad, you're not needed here anymore. You've done enough. We can handle our lives without you." The words hit harder than any blow I'd taken in my life. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Not needed? After everything I'd sacrificed? I wanted to argue, to shout, to remind him of the nights I worked overtime so he could sleep in a warm bed, to remind him that every inch of his life was built on the foundation of my sweat and blood. But I didn't. I just smiled. A tired, knowing smile. A tired, knowing smile. "All right, son," I said quietly, "if that's what you want." Melissa smirked, satisfied. Daniel nodded, almost relieved. And just like that, I was escorted out of the very house my money had built. But as I walked away, my heart burning, a thought settled in my mind. They thought I was done. They thought I was just an old man with nothing left to give. But they didn't know the truth, because while Daniel and Melissa thought I lived on scraps of retirement, they didn't know about the company I had quietly built with two old friends after retiring. They didn't know about the investments, the land I'd bought and sold, the small fortune that had grown quietly under their noses. I wasn't poor, I wasn't weak, and I certainly wasn't done. So I stepped back, letting them think they had pushed me aside, letting them live in their arrogance. But inside, I was waiting for the day they would come knocking. Because I knew one thing with absolute certainty. When greed runs your life, it always eats you alive in the end. And I didn't have to wait long. 3 months later, in the dead of winter, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Daniel, his expensive coat dusted with snow, his face pale with desperation. "Dad," he stammered, "please, we need your help. We need money." I leaned against the doorway, my heart steady. So it had begun. Snowflakes clung to Daniel's eyelashes as he stood on my porch, shivering despite the heavy wool of his coat. For the first time in years, I saw fear etched into his face. "Dad," he repeated, his voice trembling. "Please let me in. We need your help." I stepped aside silently. He hurried in, brushing the cold from his shoulders, pacing like a man trapped in his own shadow. Melissa wasn't with him. That told me more than his words ever could. "What is it, son?" I asked, lowering myself into my worn recliner. Daniel swallowed hard, his hands twisting together. "It's the business, the mortgage, the cars. We're drowning. Melissa's credit cards are maxed out, and the bank is threatening foreclosure. Dad, I need money." I studied him carefully. My son, once so proud, now trembling like a child again. "How much?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. His eyes flicked to mine, then away. "500,000, just to catch up." The number rolled off his tongue as if it were nothing. But to me, it wasn't just money. It was years of sacrifice, of discipline, of nights spent working while he slept safe in his bed. "500,000, I repeated slowly. "That's not catching up, Daniel. That's saving you from ruin." He flinched. "I know, Dad. I know what I said before, that you weren't needed." I didn't mean it. I was just frustrated. Melissa, she was pressuring me. I shouldn't have said it. A bitter laugh escaped me. "You meant it. Don't lie to me now, son. You meant every word." The silence between us was heavy. The only sound was the creak of the old clock on the wall, ticking away the seconds. Finally, he whispered, "Please, I have no one else to turn to." That was the truth. His friends were gone. His wife had pushed him into debt. And now, like a lost boy, he'd come back to the father he had thrown aside. I leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp. "Like, you said I wasn't needed. But now you need me. Why should I help you?" He dropped to his knees. My grown son kneeling on my living room carpet, tears streaking his face. "Because I'll lose everything," he sobbed. "The house, the business, my marriage, everything. Please, Dad, just this once." I watched him, and my heart ached. For a moment, I saw the little boy who once clung to me, after nightmares, begging me not to leave his side. But behind that memory stood the man who had cast me aside like trash. He didn't know that the fortune he begged for was already his inheritance, money I had planned to leave him one day, money I had saved for him, despite his cruelty. And now, he wanted it early. I stood slowly, looking down at him. "Daniel," I said, my voice firm, "I'll give you what you're asking for, but not in the way you think." He looked up, confusion written across his tear-stained face. "What do you mean?" I smiled, a smile that carried all the weight of years of silence and sacrifice. "You'll see." Daniel stared up at me, his eyes red, his chest heaving like he'd run miles. My words seemed to hang in the air, heavy with mystery. "Not the way you think," I repeated slowly. "You came here asking for $500,000? That's not money you earn. It's money you learn." He frowned, his brows knitting together. "Dad, I don't understand. Are you saying you'll help or not?" I turned toward the mantel, where an old framed photo of him as a boy sat between two candlesticks. His smile in that picture was pure innocent. Before greed, before Melissa, before arrogance. "I'll help you, Daniel," I said, my voice measured. "But under conditions." He rose to his feet, his voice catching. "Dad, this isn't the time for games. We're about to lose everything." "Exactly," I said. "Because you never learned the value of what you already had. You spent money you didn't earn, lived in houses you didn't pay for, drove cars bought with debt. And when I stood in your way, you said I wasn't needed. Do you remember?" His face flushed crimson. "I was wrong," he snapped. "I admitted it. Isn't that enough?" "Words are cheap, son. You've proven that." His shoulders slumped. The fire drained out of him, replaced by shame. "What do you want me to do?" I folded my arms, letting silence fill the room before answering. "If you want my help, you'll earn it. You'll work for me, for 1 year. Every day, side by side, just like I once worked for you. No shortcuts, no arrogance. You'll relearn what it means to build something with your own hands." He blinked, stunned. "Work for you? Dad, I'm running a company. I don't have time to." He gestured helplessly at the old carpenter's tools I kept in the corner. "You don't have a company anymore," I interrupted. "It's collapsing. The bank owns more of your house than you do. You have nothing but debt. So yes, you do have time. And if you want my money, you'll give me your labor." He shook his head violently. "This is insane. You'd rather humiliate me than help me? You'd let me fall just to teach me some kind of lesson?" I stepped closer, my voice sharp now. "We already humiliated yourself, Daniel. The only question is, will you rise from it, or will you keep sinking?" Tears welled in his eyes again, but this time he didn't collapse. He stood tall, trembling, torn between pride and desperation. Finally, he whispered, "If I do this, if I agree, you'll give me the money?" I nodded once. "Not a penny before, not a cent without work. Prove to me you can carry a load, finish a job, sweat without complaint, and then we'll talk." Daniel swallowed hard, his jaw tightened. "Fine, I'll do it." But as he said the words, I could see something flicker in his eyes. Not humility, not gratitude. No, something darker. Like a plan. And in that moment, I knew this agreement would not just test his character, it would test mine. The next morning, Daniel showed up at my place just after sunrise. He looked out of place standing there in designer sneakers and a cashmere coat, his hands stuffed in his pockets as if afraid to get them dirty. I tossed him a pair of old work gloves. "You won't need the coat where we're going." He frowned, glancing around. "Where exactly are we going, Dad?" I gestured to the truck parked in the driveway. "To rebuild something real. Hop in." We drove out to a small property I'd bought years ago on the edge of town. An old barn sagged against the wind, its wooden beams cracked, its roof full of holes. Weeds had taken over the field, and rusted tools lay scattered like relics of another life. Daniel stepped out of the truck, staring. "You've got to be kidding me." I shook my head. "This barn was built by your grandfather's hands. It sheltered animals through storms, stored food through winters, and now it's rotting. You want my help? You'll start here. We'll restore it together." His laugh was bitter. "Dad, this is pointless. You could just write a check." I cut him off. "No checks. Sweat, blood, time. That's the only currency that matters here." For weeks, Daniel came every morning. I watched him struggle with a hammer, curse under his breath when splinters lodged in his palms, wipe sweat from his brow like it was poison. At night, he'd drive back to Melissa, who I knew was fuming that her husband was wasting time instead of fixing their financial disaster. And yet slowly, something began to shift. The first time he lifted a beam onto his shoulder without complaint, I saw a flicker of pride in his eyes. The first time we replaced a section of the roof together, his hands blistered and raw. He smiled despite the pain. It reminded me of the boy who once helped me plant trees in our backyard, digging holes with a plastic shovel, determined to match my pace. But that boy was buried deep, and Melissa wasn't about to let him stay buried. One evening, as Daniel packed up, his phone buzzed. Melissa's name lit the screen. He stepped aside, his voice low but sharp. "Don't worry, babe. He'll crack soon. He has to. He wouldn't let me suffer like this." I froze, the words cutting through me like frost. So it was true. He wasn't here to change. He wasn't here to learn. He was here to play me, to milk me for money until I gave in. My heart sank, but I stayed silent. I had to see how far he'd go. The next day, I handed him a new task, climbing onto the half-finished roof to lay fresh shingles. As he looked up at the steep incline, a shadow crossed his face, not of fear, but calculation. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. Lang Daniel wasn't just planning to trick me out of money. No, he was planning something far more dangerous. The barn loomed tall against the gray sky, its skeletal frame patched with the work we'd already done. I handed Daniel a bundle of shingles. "Take these up," I said. "We'll start from the ridgeline and work our way down." He hesitated, his jaw tight. "You sure you want me up there? It's not exactly safe." "That's the point," I replied. "Real work is never safe, but it's honest." His eyes flickered, and for a second, I caught something in his gaze. Not fear, not reluctance. Something colder. We climbed together, the ladder rattling against the old wood. My hands moved with the memory of decades, measuring, hammering, balancing on beams. Daniel, on the other hand, wobbled with every step. At one point, he looked down, his hand tightening on the beam. "Linked. It's a long way down," he muttered. You'll be fine, I said, adjusting my footing. Focus on the work. But while my eyes were on the shingles, I felt his on me. Not like a student watching a teacher, but like a predator watching prey. And then I saw it. The way his boot nudged the ladder. The subtle shift, just enough to make it unstable. I froze, my heart hammering. My own son. Would he really? Careful, I said calmly, my voice steady despite the storm rising in my chest. One wrong move and you'll bring us both down. He smiled faintly, too faintly. Bertie, yeah, wouldn't want that. But I knew, in that moment, I knew. Melissa's voice, his desperation, his greed. It had all boiled into this. If I fell from that roof, everything would be his by default. The money, the property, the inheritance I'd kept hidden. That night, I lay awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling. My hands were calloused from work, but it was the ache in my chest that kept me awake. My son hadn't just disrespected me. He hadn't just betrayed me. He'd thought of killing me. And if I didn't act, the next accident might succeed. The next morning, I handed Daniel a folded envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "My lawyer's address," I said evenly. "Tomorrow, you'll come with me. There are things you need to hear about the fortune you think you're entitled to." His eyes widened, shock, then greed, then the faintest curl of a smile. He thought he was finally winning, but what awaited him at that lawyer's office would be the end of his illusions and the beginning of his downfall. The morning was cold and damp, fog curling along the edges of the highway as Daniel and I drove in silence. He sat stiffly in the passenger seat, clutching the envelope like it was a ticket to paradise. Every now and then, he stole glances at me, curious, suspicious, greedy. "You never told me you had a lawyer," he finally muttered. "Some things aren't meant to be spoken," I replied, "only revealed when the time is right." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. The law office was small but elegant, mahogany shelves lined with leather-bound books, a grandfather clock ticking steadily in the corner. Behind the desk sat Mr. Harris, my attorney for nearly 20 years, a man who had seen me through the lean years and the wealthy ones. He greeted me warmly, then looked at Daniel with a professional coolness. "So this is your son," Harris said. "Shall we begin?" Daniel's eyes darted around the room, landing on a thick folder marked with my name. His breath quickened. "Dad," he whispered, "what's in there?" Mr. Harris adjusted his glasses and opened the file. "Your father," he began, "is not the broke retiree you may think he is. Over the last 20 years, he has accumulated a net worth exceeding $23 million through property investments, land acquisitions, and business partnerships." Daniel's mouth fell open. "23 million? He almost shouted it, his voice cracking. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" I kept my eyes on him, steady as stone. "Because you weren't ready to know. And now I see I was right," Mr. Harris continued, his voice calm but firm. "Here's the most important detail, Mr. Daniel. None of this wealth is automatically yours. Your father's will has specific conditions. It goes only to family members who demonstrate responsibility, loyalty, and respect. Otherwise, it will be donated entirely to charity." Daniel paled. "What? That's insane. I'm your son. It should be mine." I leaned forward, my hands folded. "You said I wasn't needed, Daniel. That cut deeper than you'll ever know. But this is my legacy. I won't let arrogance destroy it." He slammed his fists onto the desk, startling even Mr. Harris. "Lang, you can't do this. You're my father. That money belongs to me." My voice was cold as steel. "No, that money belongs to the man who values family over greed. The man who understands sacrifice. The man I raised, but who seems to have disappeared." Daniel trembled, his face red with rage and humiliation. "You'll regret this, old man," he spat. "You'll regret crossing me." He stormed out of the office, slamming the door so hard the books rattled on their shelves. I stayed seated, my heart heavy, because I knew one thing for certain: my son wasn't finished, and the next move he made could destroy us both. For 2 weeks after the meeting at Mr. Harris's office, Daniel didn't call, didn't visit, didn't even send a text. The silence wasn't peace. It was pressure, a storm gathering on the horizon. I tried to focus on my work, on the barn, on small projects around my house. but I could feel it. That heavy weight in the air, the sense that something dark was brewing. Then, one evening, the storm arrived. It was close to midnight when the pounding on my front door shook me awake. "Dad," Daniel's voice slurred, thick with alcohol and rage. "Open the door." I pulled my robe tighter and opened it cautiously. He stood there swaying, his shirt wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he hissed. "Hiding millions, stringing me along, treating me like a beggar." I kept my voice calm. "Daniel, you're drunk. Go home before you say something you can't take back." But he shoved past me, stumbling into the living room. "No, I'm not leaving until you admit it. That money should be mine." He grabbed one of my old photo frames off the shelf and hurled it to the floor, glass shattering across the rug. His face twisted with fury. "You owe me, Dad. I wasted my life trying to prove myself because of you. If you had just handed me what was mine, none of this would have happened." I stood tall, my hands trembling, but my voice steady. "What's happened, Daniel? Is that you've forgotten who you are? You're not the boy I raised. You're a man poisoned by greed." His eyes narrowed. "If you won't give me the money, I'll take it." The silence that followed felt like ice water in my veins. He stormed out of the house, his car screeching away into the night. I stood among the shards of broken glass, staring at the photo of his childhood face smiling up at me. I knew then he wasn't bluffing. The next time Daniel came back, he wouldn't come alone, and he wouldn't come asking. He would come taking. The very next day, Mr. Harris called me. His voice was grim. "Robert," he said, "I just received notice that someone tried to access your financial accounts using forged documents. Do you know anything about this?" My chest tightened. I knew exactly who it was. My son had declared war. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Forged documents?" I asked, my voice shaking with both fear and fury. "Yes," Mr. Harris said gravely. "Someone tried to pass themselves off as your legal proxy. Fortunately, the bank recognized inconsistencies in the signature. But Robert, if they try again, they might not fail." My stomach twisted. I was Daniel. I didn't need proof. A father knows. "Thank you, Harris," I said quietly. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." That night, I sat at my desk, pulling out files I hadn't touched in years. Property deeds, business contracts, investment portfolios. Daniel thought my fortune was just numbers in a bank account. He didn't realize I had secured every dollar, every acre of land, behind walls of iron. And now, I would use those same walls to trap him. I contacted Mr. Harris again, outlining a new plan. My voice was steady, but my heart pounded as I explained it. He hesitated. "Robert, are you sure about this? It's unorthodox." "I'm sure," I said. He wanted to play with greed. "Fine, let him choke on it." 2 days later, my fears were confirmed. Daniel stormed into my home unannounced, his face wild, his breath smelling of whiskey. "Dad," he shouted, "Melissa's left me. The bank's frozen my accounts. I've got nothing, but I know you've got millions hidden. Give it to me." I stayed calm, seated in my recliner. "Sit down, Daniel." "I don't want to sit," he roared. "I want my money." "Then you'll listen," I said, my voice sharp as steel. "Because I've spoken to Mr. Harris, and there is a way for you to get it." His breathing slowed, suspicion flickering in his eyes. "What way?" I leaned forward, meeting his gaze. "There's an account, one I've set aside, but it's locked. To open it, you'll have to prove yourself. You'll have to follow my instructions exactly. If you do, you'll have access to everything." His anger shifted into hunger. "What kind of instructions?" "You'll find out," I said. "Tomorrow morning, meet me at the lawyer's office." Daniel's lips curled into a greedy smile. "Finally, you're giving me what I deserve." I smiled too, though mine carried a weight he couldn't see. Because tomorrow wasn't going to be his victory. It was going to be his reckoning. The next morning, Daniel strutted into Mr. Harris's office, his hair slicked back, his suit freshly pressed as if appearances could hide his desperation. "Where's the account?" he demanded before even sitting down. "Show me the paperwork. Let's get this over with." Mr. Harris exchanged a glance with me. I gave a small nod. "Patience, Daniel," I said calmly. "This isn't about signing your name on a check. This is about responsibility. You'll need to pass a test. Daniel scoffed, throwing himself into the leather chair across from me. A test? Dad, this isn't school. Just hand it over. But Mr. Harris slid a document across the desk. Your father has established a trust. To access it, you must first prove that you can manage money wisely. There are steps, conditions. Daniel snatched up the paper, scanning it quickly. His face went pale. 10 years? He barked. You expect me to wait 10 years? I folded my hands. Yes, the trust pays out in increments, based on responsibility. The first installment comes after you show steady employment and financial stability, then more after 5 years. The full amount only after 10 years of proven responsibility. He slammed his fist on the desk, making the pens rattle. This is ridiculous. You're dangling it in front of me, like I'm a dog waiting for scraps. No, I said softly. I'm offering you a chance to rebuild yourself, to become the man I know you can be. His face twisted, rage and greed boiling over. You think you're clever, Dad, but you're not. You think you can control me with your money. But I'll find another way. I'll take what's mine, one way or another. Mr. Harris's voice cut through, cold and sharp. Be very careful, Daniel. Threatening your father in front of a lawyer only strengthens his case. If you continue down this path, not only will you lose access to this trust, you could face charges. For a moment, silence filled the room. The clock on the wall ticked louder than a heartbeat. Daniel's eyes darted between me and Mr. Harris. His lips trembled with words he didn't dare say. Finally, he shoved the papers back across the desk. This isn't over, he spat. I'll get the money, with or without your approval. As he stormed out, slamming the door behind him, Mr. Harris leaned forward, lowering his voice. Robert, he's going to make a move, a desperate one. Are you ready for that? I nodded slowly.
Yes, let him come. He thinks this is about money.
But it's about something far more valuable. What's that? Mr. Harris asked. My son's soul, I whispered. That night, as I sat alone in my quiet house, headlights flashed through my window. A car pulled into the driveway. Daniel stepped out, his figure silhouetted against the moonlight. And he wasn't alone. 2 men climbed out of the car behind him. My heart sank. My son hadn't come back to talk. He'd come back to take. I sat perfectly still in my armchair as Daniel's car door slammed shut. Through the lace curtains, I saw him march toward my porch, flanked by 2 men built like brick walls. One carried something heavy in his jacket. The other cracked his knuckles as if warming up for a fight. My heart pounded, but my mind stayed clear. I had been expecting this. The knock wasn't polite this time. It was a hammering demand. Dad, Daniel's voice bellowed through the wood. Open the door, now. I rose slowly, every joint aching, but my spirit firm. When I opened the door, the 3 of them filled the frame like shadows. Evening, son, I said, my voice calm. You've brought company. Daniel's eyes gleamed with a manic hunger. Cut the games. You've got millions hidden away. And tonight, you're going to show me where. The 2 men pushed past me into the house, their boots thudding against my wooden floor. One sneered at the photographs on the wall. The other peered down the hallway. Daniel stepped inside last, slamming the door shut behind him. I didn't want it to come to this, Dad, but you left me no choice. You think you can control me with your rules, your conditions? Well, not anymore. My hands curled into fists at my side. You've already made your choice, Daniel, long before tonight. He smirked. Where's the safe? I let out a slow breath. Want the safe? Fine. Follow me. The 3 of them followed as I led them to the study. In the corner sat an old oak cabinet, one Daniel had seen 100 times before. I knelt and tapped the base. With a faint click, the false panel opened, revealing a heavy steel door behind it. Daniel's breath hitched. Clyde, I knew it, he whispered. Open it. I bent, turning the combination lock with practiced hands. The door creaked open, revealing stacks of files, ledgers, and a few boxes bound with twine. That's it? Daniel snapped. Where's the money? Where's the cash? I smiled faintly. Patience, son. You'll see everything soon. Suddenly, bright light flooded the room. Police, hands where we can see them. Daniel spun around as uniformed officers stormed through the doorway, weapons drawn. His 2 hired men dropped instantly, their bravado dissolving into fear as cuffs clicked around their wrists. Daniel froze, his face pale. What? What is this? I stepped back, my voice calm. This, son, is the lesson you refused to learn. Actions have consequences. I warned you not to let greed drive you, but you didn't listen. The officer shoved Daniel against the wall, cuffing his wrists as he struggled. You set me up, he shouted, his voice cracking with fury and desperation. You're my father, you can't do this to me. But as the police dragged him toward the door, I whispered the words he'd once thrown at me. You're not needed here anymore. His eyes widened in shock. Then he was gone. The house was quiet after the police left. Too quiet. Only the echo of Daniel's last words clung to the walls. You're my father. You can't do this to me. But I had done it. Not out of spite, not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. The next morning, Mr. Harris called. They're holding Daniel on charges of attempted fraud and conspiracy, he said. His two companions have already confessed that he hired them. The evidence is strong. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my weathered hands. I'd built houses with these hands, roads, a life, and now I had helped build a prison around my own son. 2 weeks later, I visited him at the county jail. He looked smaller somehow, slumped on the other side of the glass, his arrogance stripped away. Dad, he said, his voice breaking, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Melissa's gone. The house is gone. Everything's gone. I just thought if I had the money, maybe I could fix it all. I studied him in silence, my heart aching. Money doesn't fix what's broken inside, Daniel. It only magnifies it. I wanted to teach you that before it was too late. But you refused to listen. Tears filled his eyes. Can you ever forgive me? I pressed my hand against the glass. I already have. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You'll serve your time, and maybe, when you walk out of here, you'll finally understand the value of what you nearly destroyed. Months passed. The barn was finally restored, standing tall once more against the horizon. Strong, honest, built with sweat, patience, and care, just like it had been in my father's time. I often stood there at sunset, the golden light spilling over the fields, and thought of Daniel. I prayed that when he got out, he'd come here, that he'd see what real wealth looked like. Not stacks of money, not fast cars, not big houses, but love, work, legacy. My son once told me, Dad, you're not needed here anymore. And for a while, I believed him. But in the end, he came to see that what he needed wasn't my fortune. It was my example. Family isn't about money. It isn't about inheritance. It's about loyalty, respect, and love. And if greed blinds you to that, you'll lose everything before you even know what you had. So ask yourself this: are you chasing wealth, or are you building something that lasts? If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. Because sometimes the greatest fortune we can give is not money, but wisdom.